I thought I knew my brother until I found out he forged Dad's will after his sudden. The house we grew up in sold behind my back, our mother's savings emptied, and that was only the beginning. When I confronted him, I discovered a secret that shattered everything I believed about our family. My name is Marcus, I'm 42, and until last year, I thought I came from a decent family. Flawed, sure, but nothing sinister. That changed the night I found out my father's death wasn't just a tragedy, it was the beginning of a carefully orchestrated betrayal. It all started with a phone call. 2:47 a.m. Tuesday. The ringtone pierced through my sleep. I fumbled for the phone and squinted at the screen. Zach home. My younger brother never called at that hour. Never. I picked up. Zach, what's going on? He sounded calm. Too calm. The dad's gone. My throat went dry. What? Heart attack in his sleep. A beat. You should get home. The words didn't register. Were you serious? But he'd already hung up. I drove back to our hometown, Maple Hollow, a tiny Pennsylvania town with more churches than gas stations. By the time I reached our childhood home, Dad's body had already been taken away. Zach was in the kitchen, drinking coffee like he was waiting for a bus. I scanned his face. No puffiness around the eyes. No red nose. No grief. You told Mom yet? I asked. She's sleeping. I didn't want to wake her. You didn't? What the hell, Zach? He raised a hand. I'll do it now. We told her together. She collapsed in my arms, sobbing like the floor had been ripped up from under her. 3 days later, at the wake, our old neighbour Helen leaned in and whispered, So sorry about your dad. I hope he left the house to you boys equally. He always said you'd take care of it. I nodded stiffly. Yeah, we'll figure it out. But something didn't sit right. After the funeral, Zach handed me a copy of the will. Dad made this a year ago. I have the original. We should get the probate going soon. I stared at the document. Everything the house, Dad's $180,000 in savings, the cabin in Lake George was left solely to Zach. I laughed out loud. Is this a joke? Nope, it's notarized in everything. Dad would never do this. People change, Zach said too quickly. He said you weren't around enough. That hit hard. I had moved to Boston, but I still visited, called, helped with bills. This didn't feel like Dad at all. I took the will to Mom. She looked at it for a long time before quietly saying, Your father never told me he updated it. That's because he didn't, I replied. And that's when it started unraveling. I drove 3 towns over to Harold Simmons, Dad's old lawyer. He blinked at the document and said, I didn't draft this. I stared at him. So who did? He frowned. That's not my signature, and your father never changed his will. Last I knew, everything was split 50-50. My heart started pounding. You were sure? Positive. So what the hell had I just read? And more importantly, who forged it? I sat in my car outside Harold Simmons' office, fingers white-knuckled on the steering wheel. My father's signature had been forged. My brother had handed me a fake will, straight-faced, as if I wouldn't question it. The rage hit slowly like hot water seeping through my veins. 3:16 p.m. Thursday. I dialed Zach. He picked up immediately. What's up? You gave me a fake will. A pause. Excuse me? I spoke to Dad's lawyer. That will didn't come from him, and it sure as hell didn't come from Dad. He sighed, like I was being dramatic. Marcus, I'm not doing this with you right now. You forged it, didn't you? Jesus, calm down. You're grieving and I hung up. I drove straight back to the house. Our family home was a white 2-story with peeling shutters and a cracked driver. It still smelled like Dad's Old Spice and burnt toast. I used my spare key and walked in. Zach was in the living room typing on his laptop. You think I wouldn't find out? I snapped. He stood slow. You're paranoid. I showed you the will. If you want to fight it, go ahead. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Say that again. His face changed. What are you doing? You're stealing from our family. Then Mom walked in. Her eyes were puffy, hair tied back sloppily. She looked 10 years older than a week ago. What's going on? She asked. I found out the will Zach gave us is a forgery. She turned to Zach. Is that true? He looked at her like a cornered animal. Mom, Dad told me you wanted me to have everything. I was the one who took care of him. Marcus left. I stepped forward. That's a lie. I was paying for his prescriptions every month. I sent money. Mom's lips trembled. Zach, did you forge that will? He didn't answer. Instead, he shoved past me and stormed out the front door. I stood there, chest heaving. Mom sank into the couch. I don't understand. Why would he do this? I shook my head. We need to find the original will. We tore the house apart. Old filing cabinets, closets, shoeboxes in the attic. Finally, in the bottom drawer of Dad's desk under a stack of tax returns, we found a blue folder labelled Last Will 2017. Inside was the original. 50-50 split. Clear as day. Signed by Dad and witnessed by Harold Simmons. Mom wept when she saw it. But just as we were absorbing the relief, I heard the back door creak. Zach stood there holding an envelope. He threw it on the kitchen table. "What's that?" I asked. His eyes locked onto mine. "A letter from Dad for me. You should read it." I opened it. At first, I thought it was fake too, but the handwriting was unmistakably Dad's. The letter read, "Zach, I've kept this from Marcus for too long. He doesn't know the full story. One day he will. When I'm gone, you'll understand why I made the choices I did. You were the one there when it mattered. I'm proud of you. Take care of your mother." My stomach dropped. What the hell was Dad talking about? And what full story didn't I know? I stared at that letter for what felt like hours. The handwriting was Dad's. I couldn't deny it. The loops on the GS, the way he always wrote the word proud like it weighed more than everything else on the page. But the message, it didn't make sense. He were the one there when it mattered. I wanted to scream. What moment was he talking about? I looked up at Zach. He was watching me, no smugness, no guilt. Just calm, calculated silence. "When did Dad give this to you?" I asked. "Last summer," Zach replied. "He said not to open it until after." "Why didn't you tell me about it sooner?" He shrugged. "Because I knew you'd react like this." Mom stayed seated on the couch, visibly shaken. Her knuckles were white around a tissue. "Did you know about this letter?" I asked her. She shook her head slowly. "No, but I remember your father acting strange last year, distant." "That tracks. I remember our phone calls suddenly getting shorter. The last one ended with him saying, 'There are things you just won't understand from where you are.' At the time, I thought he was talking about retirement. I picked up the will we'd just found and said, 'This still stands legally.'" Zach nodded. "Sure, but you don't even know what he meant by that letter, do you? Maybe you should look deeper before making accusations." He turned and walked out again. 11:42 p.m. I couldn't sleep. The letter haunted me. I sat in Dad's old recliner, scanning old photo albums for clues. There was one photo that always stood out to me, Dad standing with two boys, one on each side, at Lake George holding up a caught trout. I was 8. Zach was 5. But something was off. Behind Dad, in the background, there was a woman I didn't recognize. Not Mom. She was young, mid-20s maybe, with auburn hair and a wide smile. She stood with her arms crossed, watching us. I flipped the photo over. In Dad's handwriting, Lake George, 1991 M, Z and L. M for Marcus, Z for Zach. But who the hell was L? Mom never went to Lake George with us. She hated the bikes, the boat, the fishing. I brought her the photo. "Who's this?" I asked, pointing at the woman. She squinted. "That's I don't know. I've never seen her." "You weren't there that year, right?" "No, your father went alone with you boys." I nodded. My skin felt electric. That letter, that woman, there's something he didn't tell us. I couldn't stop obsessing. I called Harold Simmons the next morning. Did my dad ever mention someone named L? Maybe someone from Lake George? There was silence on the other end. Then Harold said quietly, "Marcus, are you sure you want to go down this road?" I froze. "What do you mean?" "There are documents your father asked me to seal unless specifically requested by you or your brother. I still have them. Release them to me, Mal." "Are you sure?" "Yes." 2 hours later, I was sitting in Harold's office with a manila envelope in my lap. I opened it. Inside were birth records handwritten in letters and a grainy photo. Zach as a baby, with a different last name, a different mother's name. I flipped to the letter on top, dated 1993. "To be opened only if Marcus asks. Zach is not your full brother. He is my son, but not your mother's. Asterisk, asterisk. I never told either of you. I tried to raise you the same. But the truth has its own clock." My fingers went numb. Zach was my half-brother. And he knew. I drove back to the house like a ghost behind the wheel. The sun was just starting to dip behind the trees, casting long shadows across the road. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, the manila envelope sitting in the passenger seat like a ticking bomb. My brother, no, half-brother, had known this whole time. The letter Dad wrote wasn't about some fake betrayal. It was about the truth I was never told. And Zach used that truth like a weapon. I parked in front of the house and walked in without knocking. Mom was in the kitchen, slicing carrots like it was just another Sunday. "I need to talk to you," I said. She looked up. "What's wrong now?" I dropped the documents on the table. She picked up the top one and immediately went pale. "Where did you get this?" Her voice cracked. "From Dad's lawyer. You want to tell me why I had to find out this way?" She sat down slowly, the knife slipping from her hand onto the cutting board. "I didn't know he still had those papers," she whispered. "But you knew." She nodded once. I found out the year after Zach was born. Your father had an affair while I was pregnant with you. The woman's name was Laura Philman. He begged me not to leave, said the baby's mother didn't want him, that he couldn't let the boy end up in the system. So you agreed to raise him. My voice was hollow. I was angry, broken, but I saw the baby and I gave in. He looked so much like your father. You never thought to tell us, Ada? Her eyes welled up. I tried, once, when you were 15, but your father stopped me, said it would ruin the bond between you. I felt like my spine was collapsing. All those years. The way Dad always sided with Zach when we fought. How he once refused to punish him for wrecking my bike, saying, he's going through something. The way Zach got out of so much. The blind spots Dad had for him. They weren't blind spots. They were guilt. I woke up before I said something I'd regret. Later that night, I texted Zach. We need to talk. Tonight, just us. He agreed to meet at Dad's cabin at Lake George, the one we both now legally owned, though he tried to cut me out of it. I arrived first. The cabin looked the same. Wood-panelled walls, the old tin canoe leaning against the boathouse, moss creeping up the stones. The lake shimmered under moonlight. Zach showed up 20 minutes later in his black pickup. He didn't look surprised to see the folder in my hands. So I said. He knew. He leaned against the porch railing. I found out when I was 17, a letter in Dad's drawer. He admitted it, said Mom wasn't my mom. You didn't tell me? Why would I? His jaw tightened. You were always the favourite. I laughed bitterly. Are you serious? Dad literally rewrote his will to give you everything. Because he owed me. Zach snapped. He got a real mother, a stable life. I got lies. You think that didn't mess me up? I stared at him stunned. You think this justifies forging a will? I didn't want your money, he said, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. We stood in silence for a long time, the crickets filling in the space between us. Then Zach said something that froze my blood. Dad didn't die of a heart attack. I blinked. What are you talking about? He looked at me, face unreadable. He fell down the stairs. I was there. He hit his head. I took a step back. What are you saying, Zach? He stared at me, unblinking. I waited 15 minutes before calling 911. My throat closed. He hadn't just betrayed us. He let Dad die. He waited 15 minutes. The words scraped out of my mouth like broken glass. I couldn't believe I was standing here, looking at Zach, my brother, my blood, or so I thought, and hearing that. Zach didn't flinch. I froze, he said, but his voice was too steady. He slipped, hit his head on the bottom step. I didn't push him. I felt sick. But you didn't help him either. He looked out over the lake. He started mumbling, couldn't move. I watched him lying there, and all I could think was maybe this is justice. You watched him die. My voice cracked. You could have saved him. You could have. I didn't make him fall. Zach snapped. I just didn't interfere. I gave Fate a window. I grabbed the porch post for balance. My vision tunneled. This wasn't just theft. It wasn't just betrayal. This was manslaughter. I thought of Dad lying at the foot of the stairs, maybe conscious, maybe scared, waiting for his son to do something. Anything. And Zach just stood there. You're a monster, I whispered. No, I'm someone who spent a lifetime in your shadow, he spat. You had everything and didn't even want it. I had to fight for scraps. You inherited the same damn house, same man, same family. Don't rewrite history just because you're bitter. He stepped closer. He told me he regretted it, marrying your mom, keeping me a secret. I was a mistake. You were the golden son. Every time I looked at him, I saw it. And you think letting him die fixed that? Zach didn't answer. I got in my car and left. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to pull over halfway back to Maple Hollow. 10:22 p.m. I called Mom. Told her everything. She went quiet. Then she said, I always feared something like this. I just never imagined he'd let him die. What do we do? I want justice, Marcus. Your father deserves that. I contacted a lawyer the next morning. Told him everything. Every word. Without a witness or confession, he said, this could be hard to prove. But he admitted it. You recorded it. I closed my eyes. No, I hadn't. But then I remembered something. When I got to the cabin, I'd shoved my phone into my jacket pocket without turning it off. The voice memo app had still been open from a note I dictated earlier in the day. I opened the app. 000 Kevin. I hit play. Zach's voice crystal clear. I waited 15 minutes before calling 911. I gave Fate a window. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. I had the evidence. I sent it to the lawyer, to the police, and then to Zach. Just one text. You really should have checked if I was recording. 5 minutes later, he called. I didn't pick up. Then he sent a text. You do this, you'll destroy everything. I stared at the screen for a long time, and then I hit send. To Mom, to our lawyer, to the detective. I thought it was over. But 3 days later, Mom called me, her voice shaking. There's something else. Marcus, something I just found in your father's locked box. What is it? An envelope with a birth certificate. I froze. So what? She whispered. It's yours. A long pause. Then, your real last name isn't even Bennett. My real last name isn't Bennett. I sat on the edge of my motel bed, the cheap floral comforter bunched up under me, the sound of Mom's voice replaying in my head like a skipping record. I called her back immediately. Open it, I said. Read it to me. Her breath was shaky on the line. It says, Marcus Elliot Rowe, born October 12, 1982, mother Eleanor Bennett, father unknown. I blinked. Unknown? That's what it says, she whispered. But I thought Dad. I thought so too. Her voice cracked. But your father kept this from both of us. He wasn't your biological father, Marcus. The walls felt like they were closing in. Why would he lie? Why raise me like I was his? I don't know, she repeated. I found letters in the same box from a man named David Rowe, dated back to when you were a baby. He was in prison at the time. He said he wanted to be involved. My head started spinning. So while Zach's secret was that Mum wasn't his mother, mine was that Dad wasn't my father. We weren't brothers by blood at all. I think your dad, as she paused, I think he married me knowing I was pregnant. He said he loved me anyway. Said he wanted to raise you like his own. I ran my hand through my hair. So all the favoritism, the pressure, the guilt trips, it was about trying to prove he was my real father. Trying to overcompensate. Maybe, Mom whispered. Maybe he loved you so much he tried to bury the truth. Or maybe he never forgave her. Or himself. Or me. Who the hell was I now? Later that night, I drove back to the family house. I found Mom sitting at the dining table with a cup of black coffee and a shoebox full of papers. Letters, baby photos, even a lock of my hair from the hospital. All signed, Love, David R. He was paroled in '89, she said. I never saw him again after that. Did Dad know? He knew everything, I told him when we first got serious. He said he didn't care. But he did, I thought. He just never said it out loud. Zach had been holding on to a lie of omission. I'd been raised under a lie of identity. No wonder everything felt like it was built on sand. The next day, police showed up at Zach's place with a warrant. I watched from my car across the street as they brought him out in handcuffs. He didn't look surprised. He just locked eyes with me as they walked him past and mouthed something. You ruined this family. But it wasn't me. It was Dad, when he chose secrets over truth. It was Mom, when she let silence rot the foundation. And it was Zach, when he let our father die and tried to bury the truth under forged document. But just when I thought everything had come to light, I got a call from a woman I didn't know. Hi, this is Marcus Rowe. Her voice trembled slightly. Who's this? My name is Lydia Feldman. I am Laura's sister. I froze. I think we need to meet. There's something you don't know about Zach's mother. What is it? She hesitated. She didn't give Zach up willingly. I blinked. What do you mean? I mean your father lied. She didn't vanish. She didn't walk away. She disappeared in 1993. Pause. She was reported missing and was never found. Reported missing. Never found. Those words hung in the air long after Lydia hung up. I sat in my car outside the diner off Route 29, hands trembling, the memory of Laura's face from that Lake George photo flashing in my mind, young, smiling, full of life. I called Lydia back within the hour. We agreed to meet in person the next day at her place in Kingston, a small town about an hour north. She lived in a modest 2-story with wind chimes on the porch and peeling paint around the window frames. She looked older than her years, with sharp grey eyes and a nervous energy that made her wring her hands constantly. She handed me a warm manila folder the moment I walked in. Inside were a missing persons report dated April 1993, a restraining order against my father, filed by Laura Feldman in March 1993, a letter addressed to Lydia with shaking handwriting. I read it slowly, my stomach turning with every line. If anything happens to me, look to Thomas Bennett. He's not who you think. He's trying to take Zach. He said he'd fix this permanently. I'm scared. My father, the man I'd idolize, defended. He threatened her. She filed a restraining order, then vanished a month later, and somehow ended up with custody of her baby. How hard did he pull this off? I asked Lydia. She looked away. Laura wasn't perfect. She had a record. Petty stuff. Your father was respected, ex-military, clean, reliable. When she disappeared, the cops barely looked into her. I sat back, mind reeling. Dad might have murdered her or helped hide her, then raised her child as his own, under the guise of being the good man who stepped up. And he kept that secret until the day he died. You think Zach knows? I asked. Lydia's face tightened. If he does, he's never contacted us, never acknowledged her side of the family, never asked. That night I didn't sleep. Not because of Zach. Not because of the stolen inheritance or the forged will. But because I no longer knew who the real villain was in the story. Zach had let Dad die. But maybe Dad had killed first. 2 weeks later, the trial began. Zach was charged with criminal negligence resulting in wrongful death. The voice recording was key. So was my testimony. So was the forged will. But what no one expected was what happened on day 4 of the trial. The defense lawyer called me to the stand. "Mr. Rowe," she said, using my real name, "did you know your father was under investigation in 1993 for a possible role in Laura Feldman's disappearance?" The courtroom went still. "No," I said slowly. "I found out recently." "Do you believe he murdered her?" A long pause. "I don't know." Then she showed the jury the letter Laura wrote, the one warning that my father might harm her. Zach's defense shifted. They painted a new story. That our father was a controlling, manipulative man, capable of far worse than we ever knew. I almost believed it. Until 3 days before sentencing, I received a package at my door. No return address. Inside was a single cassette tape, dated 1993, labelled Laura Final Recording. I found an old player, slanted in. Her voice crackled through the speaker. "If you're hearing this, I didn't run, I didn't leave Zach, I loved him. I was going to fight for him in court, but Thomas said he had friends, he told me to disappear, or he'd make me disappear. I don't know what to do." And then, sobbing, Zach hadn't just lost a mother. He was robbed of her. By my father. At the sentencing, I stood behind Zach in the courtroom. He turned once. Our eyes met. No hatred. No apology. Just the look of someone who finally understood how far the rot went. He was sentenced to 3 years in state prison with possible parole in 18 months. I didn't feel joy, but I felt justice. I sold the house. Split the money 50/50 with Mom. Donated Dad's late cabin to a local women's shelter in Laura's name. I changed my last name legally to Rowe, the name I was born with. The truth. Zach didn't come to Dad's memorial. I didn't either. Because that man didn't deserve one. He didn't leave behind a family. He left behind a crime scene,